Hello, everyone. It's Joe Glines here in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah, and Jackie here from Copenhagen, Denmark.
And welcome to the 50th AutoHotkey Webinar. It's exciting, and today we have a guest speaker, Jean Lalonde, he's presented, I think, I'm not sure, I don't know if Jean remembers, but I'd say at least he's led three of our topics.
I think so.
Maybe this is the fourth, somewhere in there, on using GitHub. I think it's going to be very cool. I know I attended one years ago in the Python meetup I went to, and I learned an amazing amount of stuff. For me at the time, with what I did, I just didn't think it was that applicable. But I think now that I'm at least a little much more advanced than I was then, I hope to actually learn and start using it. So I'm excited to see this. As I mentioned, so we're live streaming in the Facebook AutoHotkey group, or one of them. And Jackie, anything to say for you?
I don't have too much to say, but yeah, I'm also totally interested in hearing about this GitHub stuff, because sure enough, I've researched it, but I've never taken that one last step and actually starting using it dynamically. I might have uploaded a few things here and there, but actually using it to keep track of versions and stuff like that.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so let's go ahead and get, I do have a couple things here. So we had 53 registrants, and just as I said, everyone starts off muted, not because we think that we're amazing, just because, boy, the second you get over like 3 people, it becomes mayhem where you hear people, and then someone will walk in the room and they forget that they're not muted, and they'll have a conversation. So if you could, unless you're actually speaking, stay muted. If you have a question, there's a chat. Jackie and I watch that a lot, and you can definitely ask your questions there, or wait for a pause, and then, if you want to unmute yourself, but just try not to interrupt Jean as he's presenting too much. We'll take questions after he's done, unless there's something really timely and it's a good spot. But what I think the best thing is put your question in the chat, and then one of us will, bring it up for you. Unless it's a complicated question, in that case, just say, I have a question for John, and then, I'll butt in at some point, and then you can unmute yourself. So, here's a few podcasts that we did. Now, I mentioned these, the last one. I'm going to share, let me copy both of this and put them in the chat just so you guys, if you have them handy. These, I thought, Jackie, these were two of our best podcasts we had done, right? The various ways to make money with AutoHotkey was really interesting and fun. And then the second one, this was with a group of us, and it was really interesting on different ways to sell your software, right? Different ways that you can go about doing it. I'm just trying to find the chat. Here we go.
Yeah, it depends on whatever you've done with your window.
Yeah. Full
screen is well hidden.
There it is. There we go. So that's those two. This last one, I was listening to it. Because I could honestly, I saw the description of it, and I'm like, I couldn't even remember what it was. And then I started listening to it. I'm like, oh yeah, it was an interesting conversation of, people understanding what even possibly is something that could be automated. We kind of drifted on the topic, but I found it an interesting podcast nonetheless. So there's that. The next slide I have here is, as many of you I'm sure know, I did a survey for the Automator on what should our next course be. Now, I didn't want to share all the ins and outs of that, but I did think it was interesting for all of us that we can look at it and go, hey, 70%, so we had over 250 people, take the survey. 70% said they use the forum, right? And nearly half were going to YouTube, and a third using Reddit. So I thought that was pretty cool, just to help understand, right, where people are going for information. One that I should have had in this list was the AutoHotkey help. A couple people had written that in, which I do think that probably would have been higher if I had listed that.
Yeah.
And just to announce, so Azayas is working on it now. The first course we're going to create is on GUIs, which I think a lot of people is going to be really excited to. I know I am, because it's one thing that's my Achilles heel, right? It's people write me all the time asking for help with GUIs. I'm like, I don't play with GUIs. So there's that. The next one, and this is a script, so this is the script highlight. I actually found this out of necessity recently, and I'm going to hit a hotkey to launch it here. So because for whatever reason, I launched the other screen and moved over. So this is a task manager written by, and I don't know how to say it. Yeah, I'm not going to try. Fenchai, maybe. This is my taskbar, and for some reason it starts getting corrupted. And I think it's a Windows update that I did that to show the system tray, this will break on me and I can't do it. And so basically I have to pull up Task Manager, right click on Explorer, restart it, and do some other stuff. And I thought, hey, I'm sure there's a way in AutoHotkey to do this. And I actually found a Task Manager, written in AutoHotkey. And one thing I really liked about it was, as you can see, right, I have multiple AutoHotkey scripts running, but the Task Manager, if you look at it, it doesn't give you the path straight away. You have to dive into it to find which script is actually running. This one, I can look at it right here and see, which scripts are running, right? So here you can take a look at I have a spell check, my main menu, and screen clipping, and my button clock. But anyway, I liked that was available. And just again, it's built into AutoHotkey. I thought that was pretty cool. That it's a resizable GUI too. It's pretty reactive.
Oh, nice.
But I thought that was kind of slick. And on that, unless Jackie, do you have anything you want to add?
No, someone asked for a link to that task manager tool.
Yeah. In the chat. And all of this, which I think most of you guys know, after the webinar, I will upload everything onto a web page and send out a link with the recordings to the videos and any sort of files. It sounds like Sean has a deck he's going to lead us through, but not necessarily any real files. But
Joe, when you post to the chat, are you posting in private or something? Because I'm actually not seeing your post.
It's funny. Thanks for bringing it up. It was going into the waiting room, which is no longer, because I went there initially. So there was that. It let me, thanks for monitoring that, Jackie. I'm going to copy the other ones and repost so people can hopefully see them. So that'll be the other stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. And on that note, I'm going to stop sharing. And Jean, are you ready to lead?
Sure.
So just to introduce Jean, if you're not aware, he's the author of Quick Access Pop-Up, which is an amazing tool, which I mentioned a lot. It's a great tool written in AutoHotkey, but not really for AutoHotkey users per se, but it's a really helpful tool.
Yes, and I started using GitHub and Git and GitHub. When I started developing a Quick Access Pop-Up, I was just looking at when it was. It was somewhere in 2015. So I'm using this for quite a long time. However, I would say as a disclaimer that I'm more like the guy in the middle. I'm not an expert on GitHub, so I know what I use. There are things I use every day, so I'm very comfortable with that. There are things I did once when I created the project and once when I create new projects, but I don't have that many different projects actually to manage with GitHub. But so there's area where I really could not answer your question probably. Maybe are there some of you already knowing GitHub? And so if yes, feel free to jump in if you want to add something. But I think that I know enough to help someone who knows nothing, at least. And also I used it enough to testify that it really helped me developing better code. Manage my version, manage my changes in my code, having different branch to test different things. And so it really helped. And I say even for small scripts, it can be very useful. For a large program like Quick Access Pop-Up, which is thousands of lines, it's quite mandatory. Of course, there are other tools that you can use to manage your code, but this one is very, very powerful. There's quite a learning curve at the beginning, but not that big. It's just there's an effort to do, as for every new tool that you use, there's an effort to do at the beginning. So why using Git? So there's Git and GitHub and various tools. So Git is the core of the thing that is managing source code. It's being developed by Linus Torvalds, the guy who created Linux in 2005. It's a free open source software, and it's a version control system. It's allow you to commit changes to your code, and each commit is a point in the evolution of your code where you can check what has been changed. You could return to that. You can review what has been changed over time, and so that's the main topic. My main reason to use it, so I told you it allows to produce a better quality of code by being able to review changes, to compare versions of your code. It allows to maintain various branches. So I can have production branches, so the current version that is available to users. And at the same time, I have another branch for the beta users where I will have beta users test new features, give me feedback, fix it, and when it's fixed, then I can take what has been done in the beta version and merge it, so move it, if you wish, to the production version. And I can, in addition to that, have some various different development branches where I'm developing something new that I don't want to put this new code inside the beta or the main code, but when it's ready, I can merge it. So we'll see how we can manage different branches of your code. And it's also a collaborative tool. So it allows a programming team to work together. And this is the area where I know almost nothing. I always used it for myself. But there are features like pull, push. So pulling is taking the code that is there that you can change, and then you can push your changes into a different branch that the person in charge of the code can accept or reject your changes. So that's something where a team can work together and not having their changes conflict or override changes done by other users, which is a nightmare when you are more than one person working. Even when you're alone, it's a nightmare not to overwrite your changes from one version, one test to the other. So these commands to pull and push, I'm not very familiar to that. We can talk about that if you wish, exchange on that later, but it's not my main area of knowledge of this tool. So Git is by the way, I searched for that and I found no meaning for Git. So GIT stands for nothing. Okay, so if someone knows, or if someone wants to invent a meaning for these three letters, so it's a TLA without meaning. So there's GitHub. GitHub is a web platform. So it's a website where you can send your code into a repository that will contain your code. And the repository can contain various branches and various versions of your code. And GitHub is one of the, maybe it was the first, not sure, but one of the most popular platform to hold your code and your Git repository. It can manage code in any language. It can be used for any programming language, for HTML, for technical text. So you name it, what you can manage with that. Anything that would have version and being potentially used by various, maintained by various person. There are tools I will do a quick tour of this. There are tools to manage issues. There's a wiki, there's a project board. So there are various tools that can be useful, especially for a team. There's this collaboration tool that I mentioned. And it can be used using command line. And then I put my command between parentheses. It's a very ugly command line commands. So maybe we'll see some of them. When there's an error, we see an error message containing some Git code. And it's very hard for me to do these command lines. At the beginning, it was a tool built for command line, but fortunately, there's been a user interface.
Insurance, I think. Oh no. Maybe
there's a mic open here. Okay, we're good.
Yeah.
So there are Windows interface, Windows Macintosh interfaces being developed to interact with your repository in a very easy way, and this is what I will show you right after, a tool that is called SourceTree. And just about GitHub, there's also alternative, and the other one I know is Bitbucket, and the company who developed Bitbucket, it's named Atlassian. Also develop SourceTree, which is the Windows software that I'm using to develop. So you can use one or the other, GitHub or Bitbucket, as your repository. The advantage of GitHub is that there's a lot of users there, and there's a community. Users can see what others are doing, because all this is done in the open source philosophy. The advantage of, so there's a large community there. The advantage of Bitbucket, there's, I think, quite a good community also, but is that you can also create private repositories for free. On GitHub, with the free edition, what you publish is visible to everybody, which is good for some projects and not good for others. In Bitbucket, you can also have private projects. There are some limitations in the free version, but of course, if you have many projects with many users collaborating to your projects, you can pay, I don't know, I don't remember how much, but you can pay for the paid version to have more features. So I'll start with the quick demo of the GitHub platform. Where is it? So it's here. So here's my home page for my various projects on Git. So there's quick access pop-up, the most popular. 41% start the project, so they follow the project. If I do changes, they receive alerts, they can review what I changed. There's folders pop-up, which was the previous version of quick access pop-up, and some other tools that I have there. So if I enter in quick access pop-up, I see here first the code, so the files that I have in my project. They can be stored in subfolders. And I see the last commit, so the last version of each of these files. On the right side, I see how old it is. So the most recent is generally the quick access pop-up.ehq, this one here, which was posted 6 days ago. And in the middle column is the commit message. So what you write when you commit. And you could write nothing, but if you want it to be useful, you have to type what you change in the last version. So that last one here was version 10.5.5. I did an history update, I changed a link. So that's where you write shortly what you change in your code. Of course, you can, in addition to that, review the changes in the interface, and we'll see it later. The other features here that I'm not using that much, issues, I used it at some point, but I stopped. You see the most recent, I think, is 2018. I stopped using this there because I prefer to use my forum where I can interact with more flexibility with users. Pull request is something that I'm not sure, but it is requests from user that would like to take the code and change it. Never use that. Action is something new that I don't know. Project is where you could manage your project steps and project task and assignment probably. So I don't know this much. Not at all, I would say. I know the wiki, I'm using it. So it's a way to document your application. I've done that up to version 10. And at version 10 of Quick Access Pop-Up, it was a major rewrite. So a lot of stuff there is not up to date. So actually the documentation is more in my head than on GitHub. And at some point I should update this documentation, but these are pages where you can describe, for example, a lot of things didn't change, the favorite types, for example, and so various information that could help someone who would like to go in my code to understand how it's done. And the other one, I never used that. And settings is where you set up the name of your repository and a few other things, notifications and things like that. Are there questions at this time? Because what I do next is create a new project and see how after that I can transfer it to manage it on my PC.
I haven't seen anything in the chat yet. The one thing I just wanted to clarify, because I know when I was in this place several years ago and looking at it, I didn't quite understand why I should use GitHub over, hey, I have Dropbox, and Dropbox backs up all my stuff, and I think you've outlined some of the reasons of it's not just simply creating a backup of your files.
Oh,
right?
No, it's really it's a friend to you when you use it well. It's a friend to you because it can save your life at some occasion where you say, "Oh, what I've done," you can return to what it was before, and it's really. And I would say, Joe, that even for small scripts, I know you do more small scripts than large application. I think even for small scripts, at some point it doesn't work. Oh, what did I change? Because I changed something here, but why is this part of the code not working? So you can find, reviewing your changes, that, oh, it has a side effect here, and you can find more easily what happened.
Yeah. Someone asked if you can share a link to GitHub. I'm not sure if he actually means.
I can share the link to my repository if you wish.
Yeah, I didn't know if he meant just in general,
yeah,
or.
Yeah. So that's the link to where I am now. I'm in the tab repository, so where you see all the projects I have.
I did have one thing to ask, Jean. So for people who don't want something out there available to everybody, do they have it where you can do this, you don't have to make it public? Is that right?
On GitHub, you have to pay to make it private.
Okay.
And I didn't explore how much it costs or anything like that. But on GitHub, you can, on Bitbucket, you can have a free, in the free edition, you can have private repositories. Yes,
I
Jackie?
do believe I actually read the other day that GitHub, because of Microsoft taking over and all that stuff, actually ended up making it possible to make private repositories for free.
Okay, I haven't seen that. We'll check. Maybe we'll check in the process of creating a new one. We'll see if we can set it to being private. But I'll make it public for this demo. So here I'm in the repository tab, and I'll click New to create a new repository, and I'll name it GitHub Webinar, which is available. You could write a description, and can I click private? You choose. Okay, so it seems I can make it private. I won't do it, but let's assume that it would work if I would make it private. And you can ask it to initialize a README file, which is a kind of home page to your repository that you can edit to put information like copyright, contact me, or anything like that.
I believe that you can make it private and at a later time decide to make it public.
Yeah,
from how I read it. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Geek had mentioned that many editors can now use Git information to show changes live in the editor. That's pretty interesting. Visual Studio tree will show you what's been modified and unchanged and whatnot. Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, good. There's a file that you can set to exclude some files that you don't want to manage. So for example, backup files, BK, or so a lot of files that you don't want to be in your repository, but you need them in your folder where you work, so you can exclude them. And probably that choosing the language here would make it automatic, but if not, it will be empty, and you can set later what extensions or what subfolders could be excluded from your repository. And the license, let's say, for example, that we'll do it under the Apache license, and I'm creating the repository. That's the README file. That's a content of the README. It's only the title, but I can edit it here. Of course, I can edit it on my PC, but just for the demonstration, I'll
Also, Pierre mentioned that he has several private ones as well. So yeah.
On GitHub, good. So I made changes here to a small change to my README file. I will commit this change, so it will save it to my repository. So what I've done as change, I put an hello message, so that's my commit message, and I will commit it in my master branch. We'll see the various branches later. So now if I go to my files, I see that in my repository, I have the license file and the README file that was created by GitHub. Now, we'll switch to the other tool, and just before that, a few words about SourceTree. So SourceTree is a graphical user interface application to manage your repository using Windows or Mac environment. There's links here that will be in the file you will send Joe to download it or see the documentation about that. It's created by Atlassian, the same who made Bitbucket. And it's an easy interface to compare code, commit changes, manage your branches. So I'll do a quick demo here to add the repository that I just created on GitHub and add it to SourceTree. So this is SourceTree. At the top here, you have different tabs that can be open, holding each of them different projects. So I have actually the project Quick Access Pop-up being open. My test project, which is GitHub Webinar 1, and we'll just create now GitHub Webinar without the 1. On the left side, you have the various branches of the here. This section here are the branches that I have actually in Quick Access Pop-up. The main one is master that I renamed prod at some point. But by default, the main one is named master. And there's the beta branch and the alpha branch that can also, that I don't use anymore. But so mainly these are the two branches that I have here. There's the beta branch and the. Okay, I heard an echo. Excuse me, I thought someone was asking a question.
No, that was my fault. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Also, you have tags that I don't really use. I use it at some point, but didn't find it very necessary for me to use. You can have remote. I don't know exactly what it is. So there it goes in the part of what I don't know how to use it. So mainly I'm using branches and of course the file status, which will show here the files that were changed in your repository and the file comparison that we'll see on the right side. More to come on that. My current branch actually is under beta feature, what I'm working on, and it's multiple add that I'm working on actually. When this will be ready, I will merge it to the beta branch and make it available to beta users. When it will be beta tested, then I will merge it to my prod branch and make it available to all users. Okay, now, so let's start a new repository and do it here. So I will clone it's possible to create a repository here in SourceTree and then push it to GitHub, but I didn't find exactly how to do that. So my recipe, when you know something that worked, you stick to it. So I'm creating the repository on GitHub, then I'm cloning it. And what you need to clone it is the URL of the repository, which is the main, when you are in the main page of your repository, that's the URL here that I need. So I will clone it. So it asks for the source of the repository, which is the GitHub URL. The path to the folder on my system where I will put it. So I will just rename it here. Okay, so under my AutoHotkey folder on Dropbox, it will create a new folder. It has to not exist if I remember well. If it exists, you have an error message. And this will be the name of the the folder of the project, if you wish. There are some advanced tools. I think it will work. Let's pray. It worked. So what I have here is the current status of my project, which is master, with the last commit that has been done here when I updated the README file. Now this README file, it will become available on my folder that has been created here. It was not existing a minute ago. It has been created when I cloned the repository. And there are the two files here that I have actually on my repository. And this subfolder, which is named .git, which is normally hidden. I have a setting in my file manager to reveal the hidden folders, but normally you would not see it if you are a user who keep the default setting of Windows Explorer, or in this case, Directory Opus. It would not be visible, but in this, what you have is a lot of small files that contains every pieces of your changes. You don't have to go there, and I think you should not change anything there. So I have this file here. So what I'll do now, I will add a new project here, and I'll take it from here. I'll take this file and I will copy them to the other folder, which is here. So that's the initial state of my project. If I was starting from scratch, I would create my first file, etc. But for now, I'm just taking something that I already done, and I want now to manage with GitHub, which is those of you who attended the webinar we've done on file encoding is the tool I showed you when we had this webinar. So we have file encoding lab AHK, the backup file, file read file, and tutorial, which is a list of different files that we use for that webinar, and example files. So that's what we have here. And actually, if I go to my repository in SourceTree, in the working copy, you will see here that I have all these new files that has been added to my local repository. Okay, so now I would have to push this to the GitHub repository to have this backup and then manage for the future versions of these files. There are files here that I don't need to manage. For example, the example subfolder, I don't need it to be in my repository. So I will ignore these files by saying here that I will ignore everything that is under the examples folder. Okay, this will change the git ignore file here, this file here, and you see that the list was reduced. Are there backup files? There's no backup file, so of course you can also exclude files by extension. So let's say I will exclude everything that is with the txt extension. So ignore. And here I click ignore all file with this extension, which is txt, because that's the file that I selected here. And all these files will also be excluded. And finally, I would exclude this one, and I could exclude this specific file here. So ignore this exact file name, and it will be also excluded. Why I've done that? Because all the changes I would have to do in this project would be in one of these two files. Okay, so I don't need to have everything else being there. There's an advantage that if you keep them, you will have a backup on GitHub and manage version of that. But if it's a file that you change frequently just for your own use, for example, I have a to-do file. I don't want my to-do file to be published to the repository because I change it every day and it's not related to committing any changes. It's just note for me. So I exclude, this file is in my folder, but it is excluded from the repository.
So to add on to that, Jean, because to me, the word ignore, I would have used a different word. I know it's not you, right? But that I think you just answered my question of ignore. It means entirely of leave it. Don't put it at all there. I thought ignore might say put the first version there, ignore the updates. But
oh no, it's just ignore the file at all.
Okay.
Unless you already published it, and then if you ignore that after, not sure if they will be removed from the repository or not. But the idea
the new changes will be ignored.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so now these changes here are not reflected in my repository yet. So to do that, I have two steps. First, I have to commit these changes. So I will say here, so the initial code for file encoding lab, which is this small project here. That's the message, the commit message. When I click the commit here, that will be the commit message. And first I have to say, to set what files I want to commit. And for now, I will commit all files. So I will click stage all, but I could stage only one of the files if I want to commit only the changes in one of the file. So for now, the 3 files are there and it is the initial code. So it's our starting point. You see the plus here because this file has been added. When we'll change the file, we'll see that the status is not plus, but something else, which means that it's been updated, changed. So I will commit. So this now becomes empty because everything that has been changed in my code has been pushed in the repository. So there's nothing here. So if I do a new change, I will just, for example, change the README file here. It will open. It will open here. I'll close this one, which is for my previous test. So you see here the file that I created on GitHub and that I changed it on GitHub. We're with this message, and I will say hello from SourceTree, which is a change I'm doing locally. And I will save this change. And now we see that returning to SourceTree, we see now in the working copy that I have one file that has been changed. And when I click on the file, I see on the right side what were the changes that were done. So here it's a file comparing tool, if you wish. It compares the current state of the file with the changes I've done, which was to add 2 lines with a typo in the hello that I'll fix. That's very good for that because before committing something, you always review your code here. And you will see that you have a variable that you mistype. You will see that you have 2 variables for the same thing. Oh, I should use the same variable and rename them. So it's a very good. You're not. It's not mandatory to review your code, but you are inclined to review your code very well before you commit, because once it's committed, it becomes public if you have a private repository, public repository, and so you want it to be clean. Even if there's nobody looking at that, even if it's public, it doesn't mean that there are hundreds of people looking at that, but psychologically it have an effect that, oh, it becomes something that is committed, so I have to make sure it's clean. So
John, can I ask you questions on this screen in general? Because I'm getting a little confused, not confused, but just understanding here. This is going to display what's in that file, but is it even possible? Could you make that any sort of a change here? It's not an editor, right?
It's not an editor. It's only to view your changes.
Making sure.
You have different options where you can view, for example, for now, we would see 12 lines before and 6 lines before, 6 lines after. You can say, I want to see a larger part of my code, but it's only a viewer. But there's no editing here. So back to the first change I've done. So let's forget about this last change here. You remember when I committed the change here, when I committed these 3 files, and here I can review the changes that I add in these 3 files when I committed them. And for these 2, at least, it's the old file is new, is with plus. I commit it to my local repository. Now I want it to be pushed to GitHub. So to do that, I have an indicator here that there's one commit that is not been pushed or synced, if you wish, to a GitHub. And I have the same number here on the button push. So what this will do, it will push my master branch to the master branch on the on GitHub. If you have various branches, and I'll just show you on quick access pop-up, if I click push, each of these lines on the left column here are branches that I could push if they were linked to a branch on GitHub. But I don't want to push every branch on GitHub. The only branch I keep on GitHub is the prod branch, which is equivalent to the master branch that we have in the new project, and the beta branch. And if I would have changes, I would click push here after selecting only prod or only beta or both. But usually you push only one branch at a time.
So, sorry, Jean, but how did you note that those are the two that you want to have? Where are the other ones located? Where is it looking at these things and saying?
Okay. They are located in my local repository. Okay, so let's say here I'm in this branch here, which is, there's no change in this branch here. If I switch to the beta branch, I will double click here. And let's go here to my quick access pop-up main file. So here, that's my current version. That's what is published. It's version 10.5.5. It has 30,666 lines in the production version. If I click here, it will replace the version on my folder on my hard disk with the current content of the beta branch. And if I return here, I see that it's not the same version now. It's an older version, and there are beta versions here. And it's not the same number of files because this version is different. It's not the same as the prod version. So here I can review my code in the state of my last beta version. If I go here in this one, which is the one I'm working on actually. So here I have much more lines. It's closer to the one that we had in the prod. If I go to the prod here, okay, the prod is different. The prod is this one, 20,000 lines. So there are different new lines that were added in the beta version, and even new words in the one I'm working on now. So that's what allows you to switch on different versions, do changes, save changes in this version without having any impact on the other branches that you manage.
So
it will be clearer after I create a new branch for real in my new in my demo project.
Okay,
that's good.
Well, I was just trying to understand. I mean, are those files still on your computer, or those are now only in GitHub?
Okay, the only file as a complete file on my computer is the one that is selected here.
Okay.
The other ones are saved in pieces.
Okay, thank you.
Under the Git folder here. That's where the pieces are. And it is very small files. Here it's the log, but if we go in objects here.
Okay, thank you.
So, you see these 54 bytes.
Yeah, I get it now.
Okay.
So, if you allow me, so what happens is that what is going on there is that Git, what it does is that it only saves the changes between two files, right? In specific little bits, which is what he's mentioning. And everything is locally in your computer. Yep. So whenever you click on one of those versions, what Git does is that it replaces the difference between the previous file and the one that you're clicking now.
Yep.
So whenever you switch to a branch or whatever, what Git is doing internally is that when you switch to a branch, it modifies the file to reflect how it looked at that particular time when you saved it. And you can have different branches in a way that the same file can have different information in different branches, And everything else, then at the end, what you usually do, your production method, is that you do some files and then you merge it into the main branch, which his branch would be production, right? The prod branch. That's his production branch, in which every single tiny little change that he does sequentially, at the end, he merges them all to the main one. And what you see in his public repository is just the last version that has every single one of those bits together. You know,
in the branches that in the branches that you push on GitHub. So for now, these changes are all local, but I'll push it now. So you will see here that these two files will be added with the other files that I pushed. So I push. It's very fast because it's sending only the changes. And here, if I refresh my repository, I have the file that has been added. I could have subdirectories, subfolders, if I would have kept the subfolders earlier. So now, Isaiah mentioned branches. So let's create an example of this. So let's say that I want to create now a beta version of my software. So I'll click on branch and I will name it beta. You can create folders and subfolders of your, you can create branches in subsections by using slashes. For example, if I rename this folder here, beta work, and then feature X. So you see that it under a folder, what I'm working on is this folder. So it's the way I searched a long time at the beginning, how do you create folders and subfolders here? So all what you have to do is the way you name your branch with slashes, it creates these dynamic subfolders. There are not permanent subfolders. They are really there only if you put it in the name. So I'll just go back to beta here. So let's return to my README file. I'll keep the README file just because it's simpler. Maybe we'll go in the HK code after that, but for now I'll just go to my README file and I will change it and say that here is the beta branch. And remember that here I'm in the beta branch, so I will save it. And here, if I'm go in the working copy here, I see that I have one file that has been changed. Let's just reverse that. Let's return to what it was before. Oops. And
yeah, you didn't commit the last change last time. You didn't commit it.
oh, okay. Thank you, Isaiah. So I already have a change here that was in the master that I did not commit. Okay, let's return here and just go back. I'll remove this branch and I'll start over after having fixed that. Right, so in master, I have a change here. I will commit this change, which is the hello message. I will stage this file and commit it with the hello message. So now my master, I have one commit that I will push later, and my working copy, there's no change. So I'm up to date here. Everything I've done has been committed. And I'll return now to create my new branch. Now, let's say here, so let's see that here in the working copy, it's blank. There's no file change shown here. And I'll do this change here. And now it appears that there's been a change in the README file, and the change has been the addition of these two lines here. I will commit this change. Beta message, stage the file, commit the change. Now I have here in the beta section a change that is, I don't have the one here because I don't have a beta branch in the GitHub repository. I can create it, but for now, what I'll just show you is the process that, let's say that I have this change being verified. I have beta users that will check it, and I know now that the change has been done, or there's been an error on, okay, I wanted to make an exclamation mark here. So, and I will remove this one here. So I have some changes that I've done to fix things. I have the changes that has been fixed here. So I removed the space here. I added the exclamation mark. I will put my commit message, typo fixed. We'll commit this change. So I now have here in the beta branch 2 changes that are ready to be pushed to all users eventually. So if I return to my master, so let's see this file here. I have this. Let's return to the master branch. I have these 3 lines only here. What you can see now that the master here is at this stage. If I switch to the beta, it will switch to this stage here. So there's been a progression from this file to this file. And this one, the master tag here tells me that what is the current status, the current content of the master branch. And so let's say that now that the change in the beta version, beta branch is correct. I want to merge it. So I will go to my master branch and I will right click on the branch that I want to merge. So it will take the changes from the beta and merge it inside the master branch. I will click merge beta into current branch. So you have to make sure you are in the correct branch, which is the master branch. So merge beta in current. Are you sure? Are you sure that you're sure? Yes, I'm sure. So it's now merged into the master branch, and now I have 3 commits that has been made. The one I had before and the 2 others that I just made in the beta branch that are available now to be pushed to the repository. These changes are pretty simple here. I only added a few lines. But there's some magic there, and I really don't know how it's coded, but it will make sure that it will not overwrite things that should not be overwritten. And it will detect, and I'll try to make a demo of this situation where you can do changes in 2 different branches that will affect the same piece of code. And of course, then it can create a conflict because you could have made change to something, to 2 changes in the same code. So, and Git will not know which one to keep. So you will have an error, not an error message, but a conflict message that will tell you there's a conflict in the changes you want to merge. And it will highlight these conflict. And then you can go there and say, oh, okay, yes, there has been these 2 changes. And then you have to manually merge them to make them work and keep what's good from the 2 versions. A little complex to explain, but we'll try to make an example of that. So now I have master with my 3 changes. I will push them. You see that I have 2 branches, only one that is linked to a branch on my remote GitHub, and I will push it. And if I now return to GitHub, I see the files here. And the one I changed was this one here with the typo fix. If I enter in this file on the remote, so on GitHub, you will see here the file. You would see, I don't go there often. What I'm often use is the raw button here that will show you the file in its raw version. So you can save this and copy it. So it's the source code itself. When you are here, you see the same code, but because it's a README file, it's displayed as text. Like if it was HTML, you will see the rendering of the HTML. So you see the rendering of the file. But if we go to a code file, so let's go in this file here, what you see is the code itself. with the line numbers and all this. And if you don't want to have the line numbers, you just want to have the file itself, the content itself, you click on raw and you will have the content of the file that you could cut and paste or save as if you need to. There's something with the history of the file somewhere. I just never go there to do that. Maybe clicking here will give the history. Yeah, it gives the history with the changes at every step of the evolution of this file. So let's use this one here. I see the changes that has been committed. But it's not the way I'm reviewing my code. When I want to review my code, I go here and I click here in the different commit, and I can see on the right side, and often I will make it larger here to see the changes on the right side. So now let's do it with a more serious change. So I will go in the beta release, the beta version, and I will open the AutoHotkey code there, which is this one. And I will replace, I will find and replace a file name, for example. This. So replace this variable name with I'll make it the change name, just for an example. So I will replace all. So in all the file, 10 times this file name, this variable name appeared, and I change it to this new variable name. I will save it. And now in the working copy, if I click on this file, I will see all the changes in the file. So 10 times there are changes to this line here. So the one that has been changed is removed. So you see a minus sign at the beginning. So it says that this line has been removed and this line has been added. Sometimes it will be a bunch of lines. It can be 10 lines that were added or 10 lines that were removed. So the file difference is changed that way in the two versions of the file.
John, when you say that, would it still alternate each line? Each of those 10 lines, you know, the one line would be twice, or is it do 10 and 10? It's going to do alternate each line, I take it, to show it right next to each other.
It shows the previous one and the new one after the other.
Okay, thank you.
But it could be 3 old lines and 3 new lines, or 3 old lines and 5 new lines because you replace 3 lines with 5. So it shows in the order of your file what has been removed, what has been added.
Okay.
Sometimes you have to get used a little bit to understand what's there, but it is changes that you've done, so you recognize your changes when you review this.
Well, that's if you did it.
Yeah, of course. And here it shows 12 lines, 6 or 12, I'm not sure. There's a number here, which is the number of lines that are displayed. If I show only 3 lines, it will show 3 lines before the first change and 3 lines after the last one that we have in this batch here, or this chunk, when this unk. I don't know, I didn't know this word before in English. And if I want to review more of my code, I will say that I want to have 25 lines, so I see more of my code. If I see more of the context of the changes I've done. There's a limit to the number of lines of changes that can be displayed. So if you have many changes without committing, and you should commit frequently, okay? But sometimes you are really in the mood of doing your changes and you code and you forget to commit, and then you have many lines to commit, which is not a very good situation. And in this case, it can happen that SourceTree cannot show you all the changes you had. When you get at the end here, you will have ... showing you that there are other changes that you can commit, but that you cannot review.
Wow, that'd be bad.
But you can commit them one hunk. I don't know what a hunk is, like a batch or a chunk.
It's like a chunk.
A chunk? Yeah. So I will just return to the default 12 lines here. Or let's go to smaller value just to show. So here we have, I'll prefer to use chunk because I know what I say. So this chunk here, I can say, okay, it's good. I want to commit. I will stage it. So I now have part of the file that is ready to be committed, and still these changes here that I'm not committed. This one here is committed, and this one is not. Those are not committed. I could click on stage all, which will commit all the changes here by clicking commit stage selected here, which is the selected file. Stage all is when you have many files, more than one files here. You can stage all the files and all the changes in all the files at once. But usually I review the changes, so I do it one at a time. And now I will just stage the selected file completely. So all my changes are now ready to be committed.
And John, if you were working with a team of people, as you talked about earlier, would it be showing you the author of the person that made the changes? Like, does it, note that somewhere for you?
I couldn't tell.
Okay.
That's part of what I don't know. I don't know, Isaiah, if you use that.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Well, I'm just curious. So in this case, Jean's doing everything, right? So I understand they're not going to say, Jean Lalonde updated this, Jean Lalonde updated this. But if me, you, Jackie, and we were all working on this, would it have something notifying somewhere that this change was done by X person? Author?
Yes. Whenever you set up a GitHub repository, for the first time at least, you have to set up the author, right? And in his case, as he created the repository on GitHub, it gets his information from his GitHub account, right? So every single change, it has an author. Now,
and we see it on this page.
Working in one file, every single commit has an author on it.
And you can see the commit on GitHub here. We see that it's been committed by me 25 minutes ago.
Right, but in the changes,
but here I see only my changes. I would not see changes by others. It's a local tool, so it shows only your local changes.
No, hold on. It does show, so because, and I wanted to touch about this, I wanted to wait for you to finish before I touch on this. You talked about the remotes, right? And you were not kind of sure what the remote were, right?
Here, I don't use it.
So basically, it's very intuitive. You have your local files and you have your remotes, right? The remote is something that is the thing that everybody's sharing. So all of us are sharing the same code from the remote. You have your local changes. I have my local changes. We all push to the remote, which is the origin in this case, right? And when I want to work on the file, it tells me, well, there were changes on the remote by other people. You have to first fetch the changes, and then you can actually commit to it.
Okay.
Right?
And here you see who made the change.
Exactly. And when you fetch the changes in your local repository, you will be able to see who did the change anyways, because you're fetching all the information, including the commit information with the author and everything.
Okay. And tell me, what's the difference between pull and fetch?
Okay. So there's two kind of things. Whenever pull gets the information, but does not commit it on your branch. So it just stages them. So it grabs the information and stages it for commit.
Okay.
And you then manually have to review and then commit whatever you want to commit.
That's what we've done earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, but when you fetch, it grabs everything and commit it right away, so you don't have to do anything.
Okay. So that's really the part, as I said, that I do not use until up to now. So that's under remote here, where you can see what's on the repository, the hosted the repository on GitHub, and here's the branch that has been published. But here locally, I have more branches, and when these changes here in beta will be merged into master, I will be able then again to push them to the repository, and they will become visible to other developers. If I would have other people in the team, they would then be able to see it here.
In either Geek Dude, if you want to answer this, or if someone else, Geek Dude mentioned earlier some editors now can actually view these changes also in you know, live showing.
Yeah, in line, if you wish. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's a better way to describe it.
Yeah.
So that would be truly inside your editor, which to me is a little more close, less abstract.
Less and less clicking, because you don't have to use another program. You just do it. You edit your code, and you can see the changes right there in your editor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
Let's return to what I wanted to mention. We talked about branches, the production or master branches, beta. You could have also a development branch. You create as many branches as you want, and you publish only those that you want to be shared with others. We've seen that we can compare changes, see changes in your code that we can merge. And what I could do now is just browse a little bit in the quick access pop-up example, which is a live repository with many branches, things that I've started at some point and put aside, and also some branches that are used for bug fixing. So I'll switch here to quick access pop-up. And so what we have first is the production branch here. And the last status of my production branch was posted the August 12th. It's in French here. It's a French version. So it's at least it displays the dates in French. So August 12th, it was published as version 10.5.5. And after that, I've done some changes. I fixed a bug that Joe reported to me. So your bug is fixed, Joe. It's just not published yet, but it's related to the icon files. So now I see that I have a branch that has no end here. It's kind of a dead end. Okay, when I will merge this change here, so when I will go, no, it's already, no, okay, it is in a branch called prod bug fix ready icon file, which is prod bug fix ready. So I have this branch here that contains something that is ready to be merged with the production branch. I usually wait a week or two. I publish new version frequently, but I always accumulate a few changes that I will publish in a new release, and they will be or here in the bug fix ready section or in the prod feature, so where I develop new features. And there's no new features actually in this section here, but I could also have a prod features ready and prod bug fix ready. And when I'm ready to publish it, what I usually do is that I'm not merging directly in my prod branch, because I'm afraid that if something goes wrong, if I have conflicts or anything like that, I would be in my master release, so I don't like it. So what I do is I create a branch and I will call it prod and .5.6 demo, which is not a real branch, but but it will be, it will not be accepted because there's a space, no space in branch names. So I now have this branch here, which is exactly the same as prod because I just copied from prod. I see here that I have prod demo and prod, which are at the same state, at the same line. And now I will merge here this bug fix into my candidate to become a new prod release. So I merge it here. And now this branch here is equal to the branch prod demo because I added this to this branch. Do I have something else? I don't have another example here, but you see how you can have various branches. And when I switch to prod here, when I will be ready, I will switch to prod and I will now merge this pre-release, if you wish, to the master release. For now, I will just delete it because I won't use it, but I'll keep it for now.
Let me, I'm just curious here, Jean, as a real practical sense. As you said, you have this here where you can look at it, and I totally get like your point of like you don't shove it into there yet, but at this point, are you still just literally looking at the code, or is this something you can technically run also? Test
Yeah,
it.
I can run it. Yeah.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah. If the code in the editor here is the code in the active branch, which is prod now. But if I go to prod demo here and I would run it, it would run when, in fact, I am in quick access pop-up here. I would run it here. It will run with the bug fixed. The bug we had, icon file, I can run it now, it will work. If I return to the current prod without the bug fix here, and I rerun the same file, but it's not the same file, it's the previous version of the file, now the bug would appear. So you can really run one or the other depending on which file, which branch is active here.
Okay, let me interrupt you real quickly, just to make sure I understand this also. Both of those were both up to, they would push back in the changes to the same file. Is that right?
Yes.
Just making sure. Okay. Because I know, Isaiah, you mentioned earlier that it's that's what, after, if I was getting really confused until I finally realized, don't think about the things on the left as files, think of them as just little bits of information, you know, and it's the changes, right? And it's
the file here is dated 5.13 here. And if I change a branch, it will be a newer file here that will contain what is active here. So you cannot look at the file date here to know what is recent or not. Forget about that. That's not where you know what is recent or changed or before or after. What you really need to look at is here and what does it contain and when was it pushed or committed the last time.
Okay, so let me give you a little kind of an example for you to think about it, Joe. So just imagine that you have two folders, right? And you have the exact same file in those two folders, right? If you enter in one folder and modify it, now you modify the same file, right? But they're in two different folders, right? So if you enter in one folder, you run it, it runs in one way. If you enter in another folder, you run it, now it runs with the modification that you made. So the branches are mainly something like that, like they're different folders that you switch to. But the beauty of it is that you don't have to keep multiple folders on your OS. What Git does is that when you change a branch, it modifies the file for you, like if you change the folder, right? So that's the beauty of it, that you can have 10 different versions of exactly the same file, and you can switch between them. And you can make modifications to either or, and you can always switch to the previous version or the newest version, and you can work on them. And at the end, you merge them all to your main file, which is the one that you're going to publish to the public, right? But basically, you can have as many branches as you want, and you can switch between them whenever you want. And you can, even if it's the same file that you're watching, you just switch to a different branch, and it looks totally different, depending on the changes that you have done.
Yeah, and I'm not knocking, and thank you for trying, Aziz, but for me, that actually makes it worse because I'm thinking of them as files, and then I think I make this other change. That's a different file, but it's not a file, right? And the second I said, okay, this thing on the left is just this little bit of code, and it's going to put it all into one file. And I get what it's doing now. But,
it's a good analogy that different folders, but each branch is like a folder, but instead of having to copy your folder one to the other, you use branches to switch, and you use merge to put them.
Now
that works great when there's only one thing you're doing, but when you got 80 different changes.
No. Now let me go ahead and that's what I was going to tell you now. Like, what is the use of that? Like, why would you need that? So you have your production file that you publish to everybody, right? That they're using. Now there's a problem, there's a bug fix that you have to do. Now you don't want to make changes to your main file, because then if you break something, everybody's going to be affected. What you want is to work in a different copy of that file that doesn't actually affect the main file. So you create a branch and you work on that branch. While you're working on that, Everybody's using your program just fine. And now you're testing and everything is great. And after it's tested and everything is great, then you push it to your main file so everybody can access it. Now, here's the interesting thing is that you can work on multiple bug fixes at the same time. Like, okay, so somebody told me my program, when I click, it doesn't open the dialog. Well, let me work on that. I create a branch. Now I'm working on that thing. But just from the sun, somebody tells me, well, look, there's a security risk in this particular file. Oh, I have to actually fix that very quickly. Well, I make another branch that has nothing to do with the other things that I was working with. And then in the end, all the changes, I can incrementally merge them into the main one. And I just choose which one I want to work with. And I can have like 10 branches for 10 different things. Like, they don't have to be like, I don't have to have one branch for everything. I can have like 5 branches, each for a different purpose. Like,
I understand that. I'm not debating that at all. I'm just saying your analogy breaks down when you start having different things that you're working on and that you have different folders, right? And then for me, I'm just saying, as long as I think of these as little snippets of code that are in whatever, suddenly it makes a lot of sense to me, right? But I totally get you don't want to be pushing them. You know, you want to have them separate, not update your main thing, right? It was just, it was, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
What can happen now when you have different branches and that when you merge them is that you can have changes that will contradict one to the other. And I will create a small example of that in the README file here. First, I will just commit these changes when I change the variable name here. So I will just commit that so that my working copy is empty. And I will do changes in the same, on the same line in the 2 branches. So in the master version here, so the 2 are exactly the same. Oh no, first I will merge. Will I merge? Yes, I'll merge the 2 to have the same being, the 2 being equal. So I will go in the master branch and merge my beta branch is inside the master. So now the 2 branch are master and beta here are equal. And I am in master. I will do a change in my master README file. And I will, for example, say here, it's not the beta branch because I'm in the master branch, okay? And I'll do another change, I'll save it. I will commit this change to my master